the other side of the coin to the running is Mac.
Yes.
And so
Is that the first quarter stat line or is that the whole game?
I mean, again, this is the only place that if we're going to quibble with how this went here, I understand this. You would not do this if you felt differently about your quarterback. So this still speaks to how they feel to a degree about Mac Jones and what he can do in pressure situations or tight situations. They'd rather minimize, the amount that he has to do and create an environment where, he's going to make fewer mistakes or the game's not going to be in his hands.
Right.
Which is disappointing if you're like a let Mac cook sort of guy and they trust the guy and he's one of their better players and he makes good decisions and you want to see him do that. This to me speaks to, Bill saying kid's not fully ready yet for a game like this in a situation like this. So I'm taking the ball out of his hands and whatever happens, happens. Now, again, if they weren't as successful running the ball, might he have had to mix it up? I don't know. And it could have just been a simple thing of this is working. We're sticking with it. But I was borderline embarrassed for Mac, because to me, this spoke a little bit to lack of trust.
Yeah, look, I think there's two ways to look at it, and I think you hit both of them. And the game that comes to mind, even though it wasn't quite as extreme as this one, but it was close, was that 2000, I want to say it was the 2019 NFC Championship game for Jimmy Garoppolo, where I think he threw it 8 times against the Green Bay Packers, and they won the game. If you're running the football like that, and the defense isn't making you throw the ball, and on top of that, your defense is getting the job done against their offense. Because look, if Buffalo goes up in this game, right, if they go up 17-14 late in the game, or if they're putting the Patriots offense in a situation where they had to get points, then I think the game is treated differently. I do think that you open up the passing game at that point. You're not going to lose the football game running it at third and 8 and running the football all game long if you're down. So I think in a lot of ways they felt like they were ahead. They felt like the only way that the dam was truly going to break on them is if they had a bad turnover on offense and they wanted to protect the football.
But it's still so little. I mean, and you're talking third and 4, third and manageable on simple, safe plays with a just quick out, and a sideline route or something that was safe. Just to run none of those, it was nope, just turn around and hand it off, turn around, a play action, something, nothing, just nothing. I mean, and again, I hate throwing trust, but it does say something that absolutely not. We're not putting you in that situation. I don't know whether maybe that first throw he made them change their mind.
The throw to John who got away.
He floated it to Jono and got away from him right away.
Yeah.
He sailed it, and they're thinking he sails one of these over a receiver right into a DB's hands. And in a game like this, I just can't have it. So I don't know. Maybe they were really, really worried about him in the elements today.
I think it was a little bit, and you do have to wonder, okay, the Patriots have been practicing in a lot of these conditions over the last couple of weeks in Foxborough, right? Wind, rain, that type of look, very cold weather. So how has Mac looked in practice in those situations as well? Because that's the one great common thing about for the Patriots, or one great strategic thing, is that they practice in this weather. Maybe not 50-degree gusts, but they practice in a ton of this weather. So you get looks here. Now, look, in a couple of weeks, the Patriots after the bye play Indianapolis in a dome in Indy, right? Lucas Oil. Let's see if he comes out and throws the ball 35 times and throws it all over the yard against the Colts. Then I think that we can say, okay, well, in these types of games, they're going to be run first. They're going to lean on their defense and their running game and their 2 backs. And they're going to be able to win football games like that just fine. And when the weather calls for it and they're allowed to open it up, great. But ultimately, this is a bad weather football team. They play games in Foxborough, Massachusetts. They play games in Buffalo. They play games in New York against the Jets every single year as well, that maybe will hit later on in the season at other points in time. So at some point, you're going to have to put this game a little bit in Mac Jones's hands. He's not going to be able to win games like this very often. This was kind of, like I said at the top of the show, as great as this was, as fun as this was, as weird as it was, we are probably never going to see anything like this ever again. And that's that, right? So I think that's how much we have to approach it. But I can't disagree with you. As much as I want to push back on you and say, "Oh, he trusts him.
Yeah.
He thinks he can throw it in these conditions." It just didn't call for it. Sure, it definitely says something
This
about the
is a
quarterback.
clear example of
Absolutely.
right. It's not just hasn't played in these types of environments where he hasn't. He's never seen weather like this in his life.
Right.
But on top of that, this is the difference in the arm talent where a guy like Mack, and again, he's gone. I think there's a little more arm strength to come as he gets a little older and stronger. But he's
Right.
right now he's dropping balls in there, and this isn't the condition to be dropping balls. We heard receivers this week talk about how when Mac throws it, it's soft as a pillow to catch. No, you
Yeah.
need your Justin Herberts and you need your Josh Allens out there throwing 90-mile-an-hour rockets through the wind in order for the ball to get where it needs to go in a place like this. So I also it's just Mac's style. He's a guy who kind of touches and floats balls into spots over defenders, and this wind would just eat up some of his passes, I think. So perfect storm, literally and figuratively, for Mac not being
Yeah.
necessarily conditioned for this, but it's still a thing. If you run into weather again, you want to believe. I mean, here's
I
what
think
I'm
there's a difference though between snow and cold and a tornado, right? Or a windstorm or whatever you want to
this
call
is
what it was.
totally different. But
Right.
what would they have done if the Bills scored a touchdown in the 2 minutes there? At that point,
Yeah, you have to throw it. You have
would
no
you
choice.
just turn around and run?
Yeah, no, you have to throw it. Now, the one thing I will say is I think for the most part, the win was pretty consistent. But even so, Belichick said after the game that it was swirling just a little bit. And you look at when the Bills were heading with the win, is because I think that was the biggest thing on Twitter that I was seeing in my replies and stuff like that was people were going crazy of, well, when they're going with the win, why can't they throw the ball, right? When the wind's at their backs, why can't they throw the
Well,
ball?
that's where it gets
Well,
away from you.
right. So Josh Allen tried to hit. He had Stephon Diggs behind Jawan Williams, wide
Yes.
open down the left sideline, and he tried to hit him, and he wrong shouldered the ball, and it kind of fluttered and changed
Yeah.
directions late, and it went on. I mean, that was the game-winning touchdown right there on
Even
Diggs' hands, and he dropped it because of the wind. So even though that going
another
with the
one,
wind or with
another
the
one on a back
yeah,
shoulder with JC Jackson in coverage, the ball just kept going.
right,
He had a step. That ball's
yeah,
there and he's
yeah,
got
late in
him
the game, yeah,
at late in the game, and that floated on him too. It's actually harder to throw into the wind. I mean, to throw with the wind behind you because that's where the balls take off on you. If you have the arm strength that Allen has, it actually is a slightly better to throw
right,
into the wind.
right, and not to take away anything from the
And it's
Patriots
worse to
defense.
kick. It's worse to kick into it, but it's actually easier to throw if you can zip it like Allen can. So I get that with the strategy with Mac. You're really worried that ball taking off on him when they have the wind at their
Right,
backs.
and not to take away from the Patriots defense, but even Josh Allen only completed 50% of his passes, right? He was for 15 for
Yeah,
30 in this game. So even he, I think, had some
it was
bouts with the
hard.
wind as well.
Yeah,
If that is not a windy game out there and Jawan gets torched by Stephon Diggs like that, that's six in a normal condition type of game, right? So I think that you have to look at a lot of those types of things as well. But look, they're going to need more from Mac down the line. Mac knows it. Bill knows it. If they're going to win a Super Bowl, if they're going to contend in the AFC, they're not going to do it with 3 pass attempts.
yeah.
They're going to have to get more out of the quarterback than that, and that's okay. Look, you win this game, and I also wanted to mention the Patriots are heading into their bye week. Buffalo has to go play Tom Brady next week.
Tampa. Yep.
Right. So this is looking, if you're Buffalo, lost to the Patriots this week, lost to Indianapolis a few weeks ago before this, potentially lost on Sunday to Tampa and Tom Brady. And now all of a sudden you got 6 losses on the season to the Patriots. 4. That game in week 16 almost doesn't even matter, right? The Bills can win that game in week 16 against the Patriots in Foxborough.
If they go down to the Bucks, yes,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
a tough one there.
If the Patriots take care of business with the rest of their games, they're still going to win the division, right?
Right.
So it's really something that the Bills are in a little bit of a hole here, quite frankly. And this game really puts the Patriots in the driver's seat, not only in the AFC East, but also with the 1 seed, but particularly in the AFC East now, especially when you look at the Bills having to take on Tampa next week.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that. And the it's
We're asking so much for a rookie to throw more than 3 attempts in an entire game. I love that. I love that comment. I mean, look, they won the game. They did what they needed to do to win the game. But if asking too much out of a rookie is to ask him to throw
well,
more
look,
than 3 passes,
as the season goes on, your expectations change, right?
Right.
That's what it comes down to is early in the year, you're looking at Mac doing anything and thinking this is good. He looks like an NFL quarterback. That's great. But now you're all of a sudden toying with the idea of being a one seed in the playoffs as the favorite, to possibly go to the Super Bowl. At that point, the expectation level goes up. So this isn't Debbie Downer stuff, and it isn't crapping on a guy in a victory. You want to believe that there's enough faith in a quarterback to throw more than 3 passes, regardless of the conditions, if a team is going to be a serious contender going down the line. I mean, we saw, and to flip the script, you saw what happened with a guy like Jared Goff, who had to be incredibly managed by his coach and his team when they faced the Patriots. It was a total mismatch because he just wasn't ready. Mac's not that guy because Mac has already shown more than Goff has in his entire NFL career. But you just want to, it's always been about kind of just letting him find himself. And it's funny because if their record was worse, you'd probably not worry about wins and losses as much, and you just kind of let Mac play. But now that the wins really matter, you have a game like today where the game plan is to run. Sorry, kid, you're on the shelf. We'll just turn around and hand it off, and that's all we need you to do today. So
yeah, that's they did what they needed to win the game.
They did what they needed to do to win.
But when you talk about it in general, right, in terms of a big picture view, the one analogy I always love is what Daniel Jeremiah says all the time on his Move the Sticks podcast, which is, are you a truck or are you a trailer, right? Are you the one driving the parade float, or are you the one on the trailer and getting pulled, right? And in this game, Mac was a trailer, which is perfectly fine, right? Perfectly fine. And I'm sure when I go back and watch the tape, there will be a little nuances here and there of him changing the mic point or him bringing a guy over here because he has got to block a guy over there and little things like that. And we're not going to make a huge deal out of it, but there will be little chess match type of things, I'm sure, that Mac was able to do in this game to give the Patriots an advantage of the run game. And they were able to run the football pretty much at will the entire game. There were drives where they sputtered because they were running the football, but they were pretty much able to run the football as much as they wanted, when they wanted, and that's all they needed to do, point blank. And I understand that, but eventually Mac will need to be a truck. Eventually he will need to be pull the float. Eventually, in this game, they didn't need it.
Yeah, this was great. And again, going back to Bill, and again, this is trying to think of all of like Bill's glorious moments that he's had over the time. I think this one's gonna shine on his resume a little bit, just simply based off of the numbers. We've just never seen this. The numbers are eye popping. Going back to 1974 to see a game like this with 3 passes only, the amount of percentage. I think it was. This is the highest percentage of run plays in a game this millennium, which is insane. In 21 years, no team has run the ball as much as the Patriots ran it tonight. So again, a game unlike any game that we'd seen tonight.
We got some trash talk from the Bills side of things. Sean McDermott just now saying this in his press conference. Let's not give more credit than we need to give Bill Belichick in this one. So McDermott throwing some shade at Bill, which I think is fascinating. Just looking at the fact that Bill just schooled you on situational football and how to handle the conditions. But look, this is not surprising to me. This Buffalo fan base, these Buffalo coaches, these Buffalo players, they all thought they were going to win this football game tonight. They all thought the Patriots were pretenders. Then you get thrown this curveball with the weather conditions. They are a frustrated bunch right now. And McDermott definitely just...
Isn't McDermott cried last year when he beat the Patriots for the first time because he was so it meant so much to him? Just chill, dude.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But you know what, though? I get it. It is frustrating. And you could see how frustrated he was. He had an anger timeout late in the game, which was really costly, just because he was so pissed off. You could tell that this got to him because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to have the ball just rammed down your throat like that. And the narrative after the game is like, wow, Bill just did that to you. So he's going to wear this one for a little bit.
Oh, and too, that McDermott tomorrow morning, he's going into Brandon Beane, the general manager of the Bills office, and he's saying, if we don't get heavier on defense and we don't get some bigger guys in here on defense, even if they're guys, look, the Patriots do this to a degree sometimes too. Even if they're like Devon Godshaws and Carl Davises of the world, where some games they play a ton, other games they don't play much, right? But they're situational players that in these types of matchups against the Colts, against the Patriots, when teams that can run the football, we'll see what they look like against Tampa Bay next week after Leonard Fournette just ran for 4 touchdowns in that game this past was that this past week or 2 weeks ago? I can't remember. We'll see what this Bills team looks like against another team that can really run the football and out muscle you and out physical you in the trenches. You know that Buffalo is going to have to address this. They're going to draft or sign a 325-pound defensive tackle at some point, right? And try to make up for some of this. But you look at just their entire roster on defense in the front seven, outside of Tremaine Edmonds, who is a bigger guy, but more of an athletic freak, kind of like a Jamie Collins type, not really Dante Hightower much. Matt Milano basically got pulled off the field at times tonight because he's so undersized that he was just getting ran over by the Patriots. I mean, there's just no girth to this defense whatsoever.
And there's nothing worse than that.
Crazy, right? Because he doesn't have the personnel, right? He doesn't have the people. He doesn't have the horses.
It's the most, being on the other side of it, there's nothing worse for your psyche as a player or as a coach than just being pushed around. And that's how you feel. And as you said, they're demoralized on the other side. That's what you feel like when you get pushed around for 60 minutes.